Hey everyone, welcome. My name is Alton and I'm part of the development team for SEER for Software. The purpose of this presentation is to share all the new features in the latest SEER SEM release, which is version 8.2.38.1, or as we call it, the General Costing Update release.
Right.
So in the first slide, what we have here is called the feature summary table. The features listed on this table are some of the key features that were introduced in the 8.2 baseline. There are also features that aren't on this table, so if you're curious about what other fixes and other smaller features that went into this 8.2 baseline, you can feel free to take a look at our release notes. The release notes will document all the bug fixes and any other features. So
yes,
I'm going to, sorry.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to add that, as Alton said, we have lots of updates that go into the release notes. There are many dozens of pages. So we do like to highlight the big things up front, and that's what we'll be talking about today. However, absolutely, if you have your release notes, they should be with your SEER download, and go in and explore it. And towards the end, if you want to get into the real detailed changes and fixes and minor things, that's all documented there too. But we're going to focus on kind of the big things here.
Right. Mm-hmm. So all the new features in the latest release are documented at the top of this table. The main features I want to go over today are the additional item work element. So this is a new work element in SEER SEM. We have new reports, such as the WBS reports, and there are also miscellaneous enhancements that we just want to make you guys aware of. So let's go ahead and get started. So this is just a continuation of the table. So Karen.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about here is a new work element in SEER SEM called additional items. Now, anyone who's used SEER for IT or any of the other SEER products, this should look somewhat familiar. Additional items is a way to add in other values to your estimate that aren't just the size-based parametrically estimated components. So they can be used for level of effort items, one-time costs, material costs, or licenses or equipment or facilities. In the additional items, allows for your risk ranges, the uncertainty, least likely and most. They can be used to put in, say, a one-time effort or cost, and they can also be used for putting in sort of a duration-driven cost, like a effort for a certain amount of time. So Alton's going to kind of show how that works.
Okay, let me switch over. So here I have the Watcher project file. The Watcher project file we ship with our application. So if any time you can open the Watcher project file and see how we model it using the additional item. So let me just quickly go over some of the inputs for an additional item. You have to assign it to, for each additional item, you have to assign it to a certain activity and a labor category. And with that, you also have to enter the quantity, the labor hours, the material cost, and the duration. And this is the parameter that Karen talked about, where you want it to be duration-driven, which is multiply quantity by duration, or just you want to spread the total over the duration. So I'm going to show you a quick example how that works. So here I have an additional item. I have assigned it to the activity program test and labor category of QA and tester. So you can see down in the reports below that the hours are bucketed into that activity and labor category pairing that I picked. And to show you how we get this 1,824 hours, it's you take 152 and you times that by 2 quantity of FTE, and you multiply that by 6 months. Because we said we want this to be duration driven, so the 6 months will impact your estimate. So let's see, I'm going to show you another example. I'm going to quickly set a reference So this is another small feature enhancement we added to the application. We have this push pin here to basically visually tell the user which element you're referencing against. So here I have 6 months, and I'm going to triple that. And because we set it to duration driven, so we can see that our estimates are tripled. So it went from 1824 to 5,472. And I'm going to show you another example where the additional item is not duration driven. So here I'm going to remove the reference. So here I have another example. I bucketed to code and unit test with QA tester. So now you can see in the report that it's bucketed into that. And the 3,000 hours come from my 1,500 times 2 FTE. And you can see that the duration of 3 years didn't come into effect. So set a quick reference here. So if I change 3 to 5, nothing changed. And the only thing that, let's see, if I go ahead and change the quantity, if I double the quantity to 4, so you can see all my estimates double because now it's going to take the quantity of 4 and times that by 1,500. So this gives you the ability to model fixed cost or fixed effort over a period of time, or if you're doing cost or effort that changes over duration. So I'm going to go back to the slides.
So the other thing with the additional items is that it can be tied to a catalog. So the catalog could include standard costs, standard tasks, anything that you need, and it's very configurable. We ship it with some examples. Anyone who's used CRIT will be familiar with this. We actually ship it with some indicative costs for some hosted services from AWS. But how you organize the catalog and the subgroupings and everything definitely can be up to you. And the nice thing about the catalog is you can pull in costs or effort or both from the catalog. And if it's something that could change, like, for instance, a hosted service cost, there's an update from the catalog so that if you're using that and maybe 6 months later the hosted services cost change, you can get the latest cost for that. So Alton, you want to go show a live demo of that?
Sure. Sorry. I'm going to open this. So I have, I'm going to quickly show you guys how to link to catalog. So when we add a new additional item, here we can search the catalog. So for instance, for this example, I have an independent project audit, and in the catalog, I already specify the information that I want, such as 80 hours of labor, 2 weeks of duration. So these are all in the catalog. The catalog is in Excel format, and all these examples are shipped with it. The catalog is intended for the users to configure it so they can put their own catalog item that's more relevant to them. So in this example, I'm going to add an independent project audit. So you can see how all the information are ported into the dialog. And if I click OK, so now it's in this, it's going to be part of your estimate. And the next feature I want to show you is the refresh catalog item. As Karen mentioned, maybe a couple of weeks down the line, the labor hours change. I will update that in the catalog, but for your existing estimates, they're still going to be using the old hours. So now I want to update everything to the latest. So I would use the refresh catalog items, and by refresh, it would let you know that the values are updated. Of course, I didn't really update it here, so it didn't change, but that's how it's going to look like.
One other just quick note about the additional items. There's sort of 2 ways to view and enter the parameters. You can enter, each additional item is really kind of a set of parameters where you describe what it is and the hours and the units and all that. And as you can see on Alton's screen, they could be entered one by one, line by line, or you can go to the top level and just enter them all in one screen. Can you just open up like?
Right, you can.
Yeah, so you could have them all on one screen on there, or you could do them line by line. The reason we did that is so that if you are using server mode commands and copy paste and things like that, you can go in and make those granular changes to the additional items. Or if you're just kind of using the UI, usually the screen that has them all on one screen is kind of a convenient way to do it. So there's a lot of flexibility in that. Another thing is each work element or WBS element can have multiple additional items. I believe it's up to 20 items,
20,
is that right,
correct.
Alton? Okay, yeah. So you can include a number of things in any one WBS element in your estimate. Okay, so we've also added a number of reports. SEERSUM's always had a lot of detailed reports, and we've added to that a number of summary reports so that you can look at an entire project or an initiative and in various ways. So can you go to the next slide? One of them, basically these summary reports feature your work breakdown structure and various types of costs by work breakdown structure. So it would be relative. If you are at the topmost level, it'll show everything in your estimate. Or if you're at a roll-up, it'll show you the roll-up plus whatever subordinate elements in there. One thing I want to mention is the cost by fiscal year. We've always had that. And we still have the old cost by fiscal year reports, but we've added these cost by fiscal year by WBS, where we've essentially transposed it and put it on its side. So the fiscal years are in the column, and then the rows are your different WBS. And there's some configurability, which Alton will show you.
Okay. So let me open up the WBS report. So to activate those reports, you would go to the report menu up top and choose active reports, and they are in the group WBS. So I have everything activated at the moment. I'm going to be showing the WBS reports only work at the rolled up level. So as you can see here, I have the New York Hemisphere selected, and it will show everything, including the children of New York Hemisphere. So New York Hemisphere and everything underneath is reported. And another thing about this is the WBS, for example, I'm talking about the WBS cost by fiscal year. In this particular report, we allow the user to pick and choose what they want to show on the report. For example, by default, everything is included: development, maintenance, labor, material. So if you don't want maintenance, you can uncheck those. And right here, all you will see is the development portion of the cost. And on the right-hand side, we have the annual expenditure. You can do something similar, so the report and the chart will behave similarly. So I'm going to uncheck the maintenance portion of the annual expenditure. So the two reports should match up. So you can just have a quick double check on that. So the next report I want to talk about is the effort hours, WBS effort hours by fiscal year. This is similar to the WBS cost by fiscal year. Instead, it's showing the effort hours. The toggle has the option to choose between the development hours or maintenance hours. So I can uncheck development, and right now it's only showing the maintenance effort hours. And as I'm going to quickly go over each one of the report. So WBS cost by activity. Instead of seeing the yearly values, right now it's going to be by activity. So the columns are going to be the activities. So system requirement, maintenance life cycle. And you can also toggle between labor costs and material costs. The effort hours by activity, it's similar to the one previously. And the cost by labor category now, the columns are now in labor category, project manager, analyst, and you have the option to choose between the development and maintenance. So this, the effort hours by labor category is also similar. So next we get into the cost summary and the schedule summary report. So these are some of the more common FlexX report that users want to see. So we added them as part of the reporting. So the WBS cost by summary will have effort, cost, the total cost, total material cost. So these are some of the cost-related reports. And schedule, it's start date, end date, and the schedule for development and maintenance. So that's the new WBS report, and we're going to go ahead and...
Right. We have a few UI updates, basically enhancements that make it a little easier when you're making changes across, say, many element models. One of the things we've been doing just with the products in general is standardizing a lot of these features. So if they look familiar, you might have seen them in one of the other SEER products. The export commands feature is basically a way to generate a script from your estimate, and we've enhanced it so you can have the control over which elements you include. So it's not just a all or nothing type of option. You can actually cherry pick which elements you want, which could be really handy if you maybe want to recreate a model, but not include certain piece parts. The other one, again, has kind of a similar look, which is the load individual knowledge base. This is not too dissimilar to the change parameters in multiple elements, where you pick the parameters you want to change, and then you pick the elements that you want to apply it to. Same idea, but this is for changing a knowledge base. So you pick the knowledge base, the category in the knowledge base, and then this gives you the option to pick which elements to apply it to. So just things to kind of make it easier, particularly working with large estimates. And I think Alton pointed out the set reference. It'll actually show the element, the WBS element, on which the reference was set with a little red push pin. Okay, another update that we have done is to make it a lot easier to designate the type or flavor of life cycle that's best suited to your estimate. And that could include agile, traditional waterfall. We've added some new ones based on some patterns we've seen in a few different industries. And of course, you can add your own to this list. You'll notice we've got the Agile Scrum. We also have an Agile Hybrid, and there's a new Agile Hybrid knowledge-based development method knowledge base that can be paired with. So you specify this upon your project creation, and Alton will show you how that works and how it gets applied.
Okay. So to get to the screenshot at first, basically that is just the initial project creation screen. So here we changed how it looked. Now, as Karen mentioned, we allow the user to pick what if they have any kind of custom activity names that they use or custom labor category they use. So now you can specify all that as you're creating the project file. So here you see some of the new activity names such as Agile, Hybrid, Agile, Scrum. And Karen also mentioned we have the new Hybrid Agile knowledge base that we put in for this release. So I already have a couple of projects created already, so I'm just going to open them. So I'm going to have the Hybrid Agile. So just to double check, for this particular example, I have the Agile Hybrid activity name selected and Hybrid Agile development method. So what this does is it basically changes your activity names to the one that I specified. So let me just make this a little bit bigger. So you can see everything here is now the activity name has changed. Now it's talking in terms of sprint code, sprint analysis, and you can see on the left-hand side the activity report also reflect that. Another quick example I have is going to be, let's see, open another one. I'm just using a different activity name to showcase. So right here, at first I did Agile Hybrid, now I'm going to do Agile Scrum. So similarly, the activity report name has now changed to reflect that. Make this bigger, sorry. So that's the new create project dialog. And okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So with the new SEM update, we also made some changes to SEER metrics, or scatter plot, as some of you still call it. So in this screenshot, what we have now is it displays the current estimate, which is the blue triangle here you see in the screenshot. It not only it displays the current estimate, but it can now displays the range of the estimate. This is like the confidence level, so 10% to 90%. So I'm going to show you a quick example. So I'm going to open the Watcher project file with the data analyzer selected. So I already have the SEER metric set up. Just to quickly show you. So by default, it's going to grab the effort hours that I have selected here. So I have data analyzer selected. So this is the estimate from data analyzer, and you can see how this little range here. If you go to the estimate menu on top, you can go ahead and just toggle that range. If you want it to be 1% to 99%, you can do that. But I'm just going to set it to 10 to 90 to show you that this is the range. And if I go ahead and SEM, if I go ahead and change from 50 to maybe like 80%, you can see that now the current estimate went towards the upper scale of the range estimate. So this is the range as the range is the new feature in the scatter plot in the SEER metrics. Okay, going back to the slide. So yes, these are all the main big features that were in this latest release. And there are a couple of things that we want to remind you of. Projects that are saved in this latest version will not be compatible with the previous releases, especially because of the new additional item work element. And you can only have one of these 8.2 baseline installed at once. So you cannot have 8.2.22 and 8.2.38 at the same time. But if you need to support multiple versions, contact us and we'll see what we can do. And another key thing is that with the SEER database update, the latest SEER SEM release, 8.2.38.1, it shares the same database as the latest SEER IT release, which is SEER IT 2.3.9. We'll get into that in a bit. So this is the all new for 8.2.38 maintenance release. So we have the contact information on the bottom of the slide. If you have any questions with installations or something isn't working correctly, feel free to contact me, Alton, directly.
Okay, I think we're going to switch gears and talk about SEER IT 2.3. And Steve's going to take the helm on this.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. Now we're going to switch to SEER IT 2.3, which is the initial release for 2.3. This is 2.3.9, and what we're calling the pricing phase 1 release, and you'll soon see why as we get to the new features. Okay, so for this feature summary, we're going to focus on these items in the summary table, and that'll include our annual growth and annual productivity parameters. Tell you the difference that you'll see in the newer version compared to previous releases. We're going to touch on the new parameters for pricing. So these are in your pricing margin and pricing units parameters. We're going to show you a feature enhancement that we made to the application development element, the familiar one that was intended for our bringing in our SEM estimates, but we've done a little something for you for doing a little bit of application development estimation as a placeholder in your IT models. And then we're going to get to the enhancements we made to the popular global quantities and local quantities feature set, and touch on some of the modeling enhancements and miscellaneous fixes. Again, for the newer attendees who weren't a part of the first part of the meeting, all of this can be found in the release notes. We're just going to touch on the big features, the big changes that we want to let you know about. But of course, miscellaneous bug fixes and GUI changes can be found in the release notes that are included in your installation. Okay, and we'll jump right into the annual growth and productivity parameters, and I'll hand it off to Karen.
Okay, great. These updates follow something that we did last year in SEER for software, where we made it much easier to specifically describe what your operations profile is. Both SEER for software and SEER for IT support not just the project estimation. We talk a lot about project estimation, but they support ongoing support, which is what we call in IT the operations, as well as the maintenance in SEER for software. So if you want to kind of describe the fact that your operations will have spikes in terms of their user growth or devices or things like that that you need to support, you can specify those. Another component of this is the productivity gain. One of the uses that people who are planning their operations, they always say, well, there will be some improvement in how effectively we can support this because we kind of come down a learning curve. However, it doesn't go on indefinitely. So you can say, you know, in the first couple of years you might see some improvement, and then it could level off. So we can go in and really specify what's going on in terms of the quantities of users and devices and other components that are used in that ongoing support planning. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so I'll go ahead and show an example of the newer parameters, these growth and productivity parameters. One of the sample projects that gets shipped with when you have SEER-IT installed is the data center operations project, or the high-level data center operations project. This is a good example of showing the operations, so that ongoing support phase of the estimate. And so in the older versions, you would have a single parameter for growth and for productivity in a least likely most format. And now what we have is a growing list. So this is how Karen mentioned, it's similar to SEER-7 maintenance, where you actually can specify it on the annual level. So in this example, this physical services. This is the infrastructure services element. I am specifying an overall growth, 20% growth for all the support years that I've defined. So 5 years have a steady state of 20% growth. And we can kind of see it in the fiscal year report as well as the annual expenditure chart, how that 20% growth is getting laid out and estimated. And now, because we have these parameters that we can specify at the individual year level, if I switch to a different element, a different physical servers, infrastructure services element, I can see these growth parameters where I've entered different types of growth. So we're starting out with an initial growth of, let's say, 5%, but then we're expected to lose some of these users for the rest of the years, from years 3 for 5. And now we can see in the fiscal year report, the time phase reports, as well as the time phase charts, the annual expenditure, how the costs go down because the growth has gone down. And similar to the growth, so this is an example of the growth, but if I switch to the software database services element, where I'm estimating the number of servers, their virtual machines, this is another example. Now I'm looking at the productivity gain parameters. An example of where I could set, if I wanted to make it easy and make it a 10% growth from year to year, or productivity gain from year to year, I could set it as easily as that, or I can switch to a different element, and I can specify it at the individual level, where we can say we're getting that initial productivity, but then it's gone. It's going to maybe go down or reach a steady state, and I have that control now that I didn't have before. And these parameters are found in the parameters section towards the bottom, same place where you found the original parameters, but now in the ongoing support, they'll just be growing lists depending on the number of years that you've entered for the amount of support that you need. And a quick one for these, we're focusing on devices. You can also specify it for user growth. So, of course, user growth. If I have a service desk element and I have to do tier 2 support for users and applications, now we can have more control for the expected number of users changing from year to year, and I could adjust it at a top level, or I could do it for the individual years. All right, switch back to the slides.
Okay. As Steve mentioned, this is kind of our general pricing update, or the phase 1 of that. We have seen a desire for customers to use the costing and the estimation to support the pricing. Now, we're not saying that we're precisely a pricing tool, but there is a desire to have more features to support that type of function. And so this is our first step into doing that. We've got some more updates planned, but what we've added here in the economic factors is the ability to specify a margin. And a margin is different from a cost wrap in that the margin is basically the percent used to compute price from the estimated cost. So you can specify what that margin is. In addition to that, there's this idea of unit costing. In SEER for IT, there's lots of quantities specified, users, servers, devices, and so on. And oftentimes you may want to get a grand total of what all those costs are and divide it by maybe a single metric. And that metric might be users, that might be locations, it might be number of commands being supported. You can bring that up and actually look at what the cost or the price on a per unit basis is. So you can specify that either at a low-level element or at a roll-up element. And that's also very useful if you're looking at kind of benchmark targets and things like that to see where you compare on that. So Steve, you want to show the how that works?
Sure. All right. Let me switch elements. Okay. So switching to a different project that also combines a lot of different element types, infrastructure services, software database services, to show how we have different types of units. So we could have our machines, we could have the number of VMs, and in this case, we're talking pricing, and what we're looking at is the economic factors tab. So where before we were in the main parameters tab and looking at the growth and productivity, entering number of users, number of applications, we're now switching to the economic factors tab where we have our labor rates, our cost wraps, and now these new pricing parameters. So there's a pricing margin section where you can enter a margin, the percentage for labor or material, and you could do it for all the project activities, the project estimate, as well as the ongoing support. And then below the pricing margin parameters, you have the units. So this is the optional one. If you wanted to do some unit costing, you can enter the number of units as well as put a description so you know what it is, what's going to be, if it's going to be FTEs, if it's going to be locations. And then where you're going to see the impact, or where you're going to see the estimate, is in the pricing reports. So this is really important. The only two places that you're going to see it are in the pricing report and the WBS pricing. If you're on a roll-up level, then you'll look at the WBS pricing report, and if you're at the lower level, at the main estimation level, you'll go to the pricing report. And it's pretty straightforward where you have the cost. So the cost is what you would see in all the other reports. Your quick estimate, this is cost. Activity report, cost by fiscal year, that is in cost. But now we can see in the pricing where we have the cost column, we have our price column, which is the computed price based on the margins that we've entered in the parameters, and we can see the margin percentage difference. So this is at the element level, and then as we go, if I go up to the roll-up level, and I want to see the total impact for the roll-up I have selected plus its subordinate elements, now I can see, okay, for all the, I have FTEs, and I'm going to have 100 of them, what is my price per unit for the project, for the material, and for the ongoing support. So these are the two reports that you would use when you're looking at these pricing, the pricing inputs. And those can be quickly found in the Choose Available Reports. The pricing is considered the summary report, so look for it over here. And then the WBS, since it's the brand new WBS report, look for it at the very bottom of the list, so that should be easy to find. Just remember
that. Just a quick comment, too, with this pricing. If you are, say, supporting a proposal effort, you might have multiple solution designs or something like that, and you want to compare the bottom line, A against B against C, that unit pricing, even if you're not using the margins, the unit pricing is a way on a kind of a per widget basis, if you will, to compare the two options. So, and you can look at that at a WBS pricing report and look at compare the summaries against each other. So it's a way to kind of abstract out a lot of details in the costing to say, what's my kind of net effect one compared against the other.
Great. Thanks for adding that, Karen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, so another thing we've added to SEER for IT, we've always had the application development element, and that is used primarily to take your software estimates and incorporate them into your SEER IT, and we have the way to bring in your SEER SEM estimates, either a single one or a whole project worth, into that. Now, sometimes you don't always have the time or the inclination, or it's just not appropriate to get into a detailed SEER for software estimate, but you need a quick, what we call a ballpark estimator. So the application development estimate now has a set of knowledge bases to help describe, using very, very broad descriptors, what that project is about. The task type kind of describes, is it, a new feature? Is it a brand new product? Is it, just at a very high level characterization. We're not even talking platforms and applications, that types of things. We're certainly not lines of code or development methodologies. And then in the other knowledge bases, we look at, say, where you are in the life cycle, the phase of the estimate. And then there's the other one scoping it, basically saying, one of them kind of gives you an idea, you specify the range of duration, and another one is the range of people. So again, like I say, it's a ballpark estimator. And these features will kind of highlight some other features in the SEER for IT, where we can actually build your own models and CERs within an element on there. So Steve, you want to kind of give a live demo of that?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so there's a nice project called Custom Expressions Examples if you want to see the application development as well as the global quantities and expression editor. So that's a good project to look out for, the custom expression examples that's included. And what I'll do is this is an example of whenever you want to insert an element, of course, you can quickly do it from the left side options pane and just click on it on the element you want to insert. And in this case, since we're doing the application development, these are the new parameters that are available in the new release. So similar to the other elements, work your way top to bottom in the knowledge bases and just give your best guess. And you'll find this is what was in the screenshot. If you can describe what you're building, if it's brand new, if it's a feature enhancement, sorry about that. And then that's the task type, and then the categories, that phase, where are you in the life cycle, the scope, the staff level. Do you know expected amount? How is it going to be a small team, giant team, and then the duration, desired duration. So if you can come up with those knowledge bases, now when you create this application development element, you're going to have an estimate right away. You're going to have hours, you're going to have project hours, a schedule, and this is going to be brand new. And what's driving that are these local quantities. So there are these new parameters now that are basically going to be created based on those knowledge bases that you've selected. And if you need to adjust them, you can. We specified our desired schedule. We put in our assumed staffing level. But if we needed to now, we can change those. Even items as user acceptance testing, that there was a default number of iterations. But if I wanted to change that, sure, I could set a reference to what the original one was, and I could enter my least likely most range of, I think we need to do a little bit more testing. All right, and so let's see what the impact is on the estimate. All right, so I can see that it's impacting our labor. Most likely it's going to be the testing activity. We added more there. And so the part of it is that we're showing, I'm just going to quickly go to the slide and then go back to the same project, but one of the popular features of the previous release was our global quantities and local quantities. And what we've done is enhance them. We've actually given you the ability to define different types of parameters. So where before you were limited to a float, everything was a float type for anything, any new parameter, you can now specify integers, both in a least likely most format or just a single. You could also use a percent type, least likely most or single. And then over here on the right, you can even see you can do booleans, simple yes, no's, true, falses to control whether something should be added or not, or make some clever, more sophisticated if-then else's based on a boolean. And then dates. A lot of our users are creating these estimates, large estimates, where they're relying on a lot of dates. So they need more dates, more than just the project and the ongoing support start date. So we now have this date custom type, and not only that, but you can use a custom function that'll show you that where you can make dates dependent on other dates, and that can be proved to be very handy and very useful. So jumping back to the project, in this AppDev new element, you'll see there already is a bunch of mixed types. So when it's as easy as when you're creating a local quantity, you have your standard set. I've used already a couple of them, so they're removed from the list. But when you do custom, just give it a label and pick your type. There you can see it defaults to float triplet, but you can do booleans and dates. So if you're the power user, and if you're maybe creating a lot of scenarios, creating knowledge bases, these parameters will be very beneficial to you. You can see here's an example of a question. Am I going to include user acceptance testing? I'll set a reference, so that way you can see that I showed you the difference. Right now, the estimate and the reference are the same, zero difference. But because if I want to say yes, we're going to head and include it, I can see that it's my labor is impacted because I wanted to include user acceptance testing in my estimate. And what I've done is every time you see a blue, one of these blue with parameters with a chevron, so blue font with chevron, that means that there's an expression tied to it. And that expression is basically going down to, I can see that, okay, so this is one of those custom models that I created where I said, if there is user acceptance testing, all right, then we're going to do some sort of calculation based on the development hours and the number of iterations and the user acceptance. And I'm gonna basically my custom model, and it's driven by a mix of parameters. So this is what's available to you now, and you can do these. And some of the other custom types are these dates. So this is an example of I want this date, maybe a go live date, maybe a delivery date to be based on the start date plus some sort of lag time or some sort of testing time. So you can use these built-in functions that are available, and you can customize your dates. And so these become useful, and you can tie them into any other type of date parameter in your estimate within the same element. And these were demoed at the local level, so this is just at that app dev level. But if I wanted to make it global parameter settings, that same set of parameters is available. So in that high-level data operations, this one, I actually have defined growth and productivity, so kind of some defaults for the year, for each of the different years. So every time I insert an element, it can default to inheriting and being linked to these global quantities. So I just make this one single change at the top level, and it pushes it down to all the linked parameters below. And so global quantities, you could do it at the top level, or you could do it at the local level, at the individual. A lot of flexibility there with the new types and the new global quantities. All right.
Yeah, there's a lot of power there. It's definitely a power user feature, but can be used to build out a lot of robust type of scenarios and knowledge bases that, aren't just factors, but actually have, proportional relationships and even custom CERs.
All right.
Okay, so another big update is we've added a new work element to the list of ones available in SEER IT. This is for telco and carriage. It's basically very similar to the purchase hardware and purchase software for costs for adding in telephone and data transmission services. The reason we added it is actually was a particular need, in that we wanted to put in a separate one to have a separate catalog area for this. So it's not as much of a parametric estimator, but a catalog-driven type of element. And because there's sort of a big list of services and rates and things like that available, it needed its own catalog to drive what those costs are. Just a quick note is that if it's there and you can't use it, it requires a new license feature flag. If you want to use it, just give us a note and we'll give you an updated license that will enable that new element. A couple modeling enhancements as well. First of all, the labor standards database, the database that drives the rates and factors for the estimating metrics, have been updated to the kind of latest set of metrics that we've collected. And so there's going to be some differences as those are described there. One thing we've done for storage is we used to drive it in terms of storage devices. Kind of due to popular demand, we've converted that into actual storage capacity or volume and made adjustments accordingly. So take a look at that input. You may want to make some changes. And then also in the training element, if you're estimating training and you want to get the trainer time but not the trainee time, there's an option to do that. And this is similar to what I showed on the SEER for software side, just features to make it easy when you're doing changes across large models and you want to really kind of hone in and precisely drive which elements are maybe either getting the changed knowledge bases, or if you're doing export commands and scripting, which ones you want to actually export on there. Very similar to the change parameters in multiple elements. And just similar to the charting, we had the chart updates. We have just kind of a standard package that we use across all our products now. You can get the choose available charts in the chart package. And as Alton had mentioned, the file updates are there. And also, if you do use the enterprise database, both the SEER for software and SEER for IT could live in the same database, so use the same version on there, and then some updates for those database connections.
Yeah, I could see in the list of attendees, thank you. There are a couple, many of you that I've helped work with for installations and upgrades of databases, and this one has come up a few times about the alternative ODBC and DSN drivers. So with the newer version, when you install CRIT 2.3.9 and then we upgrade your database, you'll be able to use some of those alternative ODBC DSN drivers, the native clients and the ODBC drivers. So that's one to look out for those of you that are using the enterprise database. And definitely contact me or support at Galarath when you're ready to do the upgrade, so that way we can go through the similar process we did before, getting your production databases backed up and ready to go for the upgrade, and we can get you using the new version with new features.